I make the biggest mistake of my life, while only getting 3 hours of sleep and my fourth cup of coffee. Following, working a torturous 16-hour shift in the pediatric intensive care unit, witnessing children struggle for their lives as their parents disintegrate. I just want to pass out on that cheap flight to Miami for my first actual trip in 3 years. However, fatigue leads to stupidity, and stupidity leads to the wrong plane. For a moment, I'm stumbling through a thunderstorm at a posh private airport, my boarding pass barely visible through hazy eyes. I wake up firmly, 1,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean the next minute, gazing into the most icy blue eyes I've ever laid eyes on. The woman seated across from me appears to have just stepped out of a magazine, an expression that could freeze hell over, platinum blonde hair, and designer everything. How and who are you? Did you board my jet? She insists. At that point, reality strikes me like a freight train. I don't have this much money. Seat on an airplane. This private jet most likely costs more than I will earn in 10 years. Moreover, the Ice Queen was staring at me, as if I were a criminal. She obviously has enough money to get me arrested as soon as we touch down. Zaria is my name. I'm a Bronx nurse named Monroe, and I just happened to get on a billionaire's private jet by mistake. She believes I stalk people. She is, in my opinion, the most stunning woman I have ever laid eyes on. Additionally, we're both going to spend our most unexpected weekend in Paris. Before we begin, prepare yourself, buckle up, and subscribe for a unique surprise tomorrow. At precisely 2:47, I stutter through Mount Sinai Hospital's automated doors. Morning. After 16, my feet are still screaming in protest, and my scrubs are still wet with perspiration. Working nonstop on the floor of the pediatric intensive care unit, my mood is reflected in the thunderstorm outside. Exactly. Raindrops beating like a savage fist against the windows. I have 43 minutes to get there. The airport, board my red-eye to Miami, and then finally enjoy the first genuine vacation I've given myself in 3 years. The taxi ride to the airport is a haze of flooded streets and honking horns. I continue to check my phone, keeping an eye on the passing minutes as we slither through traffic that seems intent on making I'll miss my flight. The ink is a little smudged where I grabbed it, and my boarding pass is crumpled in my sweaty palm. With damp hands, flight 447 to Miami, gate 23 billion. The most affordable ticket I could locate, sandwiched between a family with 3 children under 5 and a businessman who most likely snores. However, even a middle seat in economy seems like heaven right now, compared to another shift where you watch parents fall apart while their kids struggle to survive. I assisted a 7-year-old in breathing through a ventilator today alone. Held the hand of a mother who attempted to explain to a teenage girl why her younger brother required emergency surgery. May not awaken. This work fills my heart on some days. On other days, such as today, it threatens to shatter it entirely. When I finally get there, the airport is in disarray. Half of the flights on the East Coast have been delayed by the storm, and passengers are dispersed throughout the terminal like refugees. They appear to be as worn out as I am, camping out with their bags. I run through the hallways, avoiding rolling suitcases and squeaking my sneakers on the shiny floor. Irate travelers. There is hardly anyone around when I get to what I believe to be my gate. The boarding area appears. I'm too exhausted to question it, but it's different than I anticipated and somehow more opulent. The gatekeeper hardly looks at my boarding pass and then gives me the all clear. Everyone, including the staff, is frazzled by the storm, and I'm just thankful that I'm one step away from passing out outside of a hospital room. The plane I board doesn't resemble the claustrophobic commercial aircraft I'm accustomed to. However, fatigue has caused my mind to mush. The fact that there are seats is all I can take in. I can finally sit down, and they appear to be comfortable. I close my eyes instantly after sitting in what feels like the softest leather chair I've ever seen. The thunderclap of I fall into the deepest sleep I've experienced in weeks as a result of the engines and the soft sway of takeoff. In my dreams, I see waves in the ocean and beaches with sand, of my ties with tiny umbrellas and no medical crises. My dreams are free of worried faces and beeping monitors for the first time in months. Rather, I'm floating on azure water, accompanied only by the sound of seagulls and the sun. The sensation of someone staring at me breaks the dream. I slowly open my eyes. The way you act when you're not sure whether you're still asleep. My initial observation is that the lighting is incorrect. Warm ambient light surrounds me instead of the harsh fluorescent glow of a commercial airline. Light that gives everything a golden appearance. The woman seated directly across from me is the second thing I notice, and she is looking at me as if I've just killed someone in front of her. She has an untouchable beauty that reminds you of magazine covers and ice sculptures. Platinum blonde hair falls around her shoulders in flawless waves, with not a single strand out of place, even though we're on an airplane. Apparently, she has flawless, porcelain pale skin that suggests dermatologists on speed dial and pricey skincare routines. But her eyes completely stop me from breathing. They resemble winter skies, the palest shade of blue I've ever seen. And at the moment, they're boring into me so intensely that I feel sick to my stomach. She is dressed in what must be a charcoal designer suit, gray with crisp, accurate lines that could shatter glass. She exudes wealth in every way, based on the manner in which to the faint sparkle of what I'm fairly certain are real diamonds at her ears, she maintains impeccable posture. Women are more than just wealthy. It's like armor to her. How did you board my jet? And who are you? She insists on it. Her appearance and voice go hand in hand, crisp, cold, and possessing the authority that comes from never being. Never in your life have you said no. Reality then strikes me like a sledgehammer to the chest. This airline isn't a commercial one. The seats are not claustrophobic. Torture devices of the economy class. They're enormous leather couches that most likely cost more than my rent each month. The windows are bigger than they ought to be, providing a view of the endless clouds below. The walls are adorned with real artwork. Is that a well-stocked bar in the corner? My head spins when I sit up quickly, so I have to hold on to the armrest to prevent toppling over. I apologize. I believe that something went wrong. I was meant to be on. I must have become lost in the storm on Flight 447 to Miami. Oh, and God, isn't this your private jet? She doesn't even slightly soften her expression. She appears even, if anything, more dubious now, as if my blatant panic is some elaborate charade. What a tale. Did you really think I'd think you wandered onto a private plane by accident? Do you know how many security checkpoints you would have had to go through? The charge in her tone makes my cheeks burn with anger and shame. For the past 16 hours, I've keeping kids alive. And now this ice princess believes I'm a stalker with a deranged mind. Look, I am aware of how this appears, but I'm telling the truth. I promise. I work as a nurse. I was attempting to find a cheap flight after just finishing a double shift to take a vacation in Miami. Here is my boarding pass. I stumble in my pocket for the crumpled paper, smoothing it out with trembling hands. The rain has smudged the ink, but you can still see the flight details and gate number. With 2 fingers, as if in fear, she takes it from me. I could spread whatever fatigue I'm carrying. After spending what seems like an eternity studying it, she looks back up at me with those blue eyes that are laser-focused. Gate 23 billion. You were intended to be at gate 23. The gates are adjacent to one another, and in this kind of weather, I guess it's possible the employees were too preoccupied to notice the mistake. The sense of relief I get is so intense that I almost cry. Do you believe me? Then, I'm not some crazy person attempting to get close to you. You know, her face is still reserved as she returns the boarding pass to me. I think you were wrong. I don't trust you because of that. It's possible that this complex arrangement is intended to appear to be an accident. A voice crackles over the intercom before I can reply. This is Captain, Miss Sterling, Rodriguez. We will have to make an emergency landing in Paris. I'm afraid there is a mechanical problem that requires urgent care, and the closest airport that can provide it is Charles de Gaulle. We ought to be on the ground in roughly 20 minutes. Miss Sterling, the woman across from me, closes her eyes and taking a deep breath as if she were attempting to regain her composure. She opens them once more and finds something nearly. She looks vulnerable before the mask is put back on. She calls out, "How long will the repairs take?" The pilot's seat. It's difficult to say. Ma'am, it might take a few hours or even until Monday, depending on what we discover once we're on the ground. I apologize for any inconvenience. Monday, now that it's Friday night, we might be stranded in Paris for the whole weekend. I can almost see Miss Sterling's brain working as I watch her face as this information sinks in through the ramifications. Finally, she turns those ice blue eyes back to me and says, "Well, it appears that neither of us anticipated how much time we would be spending together." The aircraft lands at Charles de Gaulle. I'm startled awake by a bump at the Gaulle airport. I can see Paris's gray morning light through the window, extending over the runway, and in spite of everything that has transpired, there is a slight glimmer of enthusiasm in my chest. Europe is a place I have never visited. I haven't traveled much outside of New York. In fact, before we've even stopped completely, Sterling is already on her phone, conversing with someone in quick French on the opposite end. Despite her professional and clipped voice, I can make out enough of what she's saying to know that she's organizing lodging and transportation. She gives me that icy look once more after hanging up. "This is what will happen," she says in a tone that makes no room for debate. "I will have you escorted to a room by hotel security, where you'll remain while my jet is being fixed. You'll have food, shelter, and full supervision. I'm having you thoroughly investigated. Go back to New York. If there's even the slightest indication that this was prearranged, you were arrested for stalking, trespassing, and any other offense my attorneys can think of." The threat is like a slap in the face, all over the face, following the events of the past 24 hours. After 16 hours of soothing frightened parents and holding wailing infants, this woman believes that I am some sort of mastermind behind criminal activity. Anger is the final result of the stress and exhaustion. Are you kidding me now? I get a little boost when I get up from my chair and realize that I'm taller than her. Of assurance, I have no idea who you believe you to be, lady, but I refuse to be treated like a prisoner because of a sincere error. I have an impeccable record as a registered nurse. I preserve lives for a living. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have time to stalk random wealthy people. I can tell she's not used to being talked back to because her eyebrows go up a little. Arbitrary wealthy individuals. Are you sincere? Do you think I don't know who I am? I cross my arms and say, I have no idea who you are. And, to be honest, I don't give a damn. Rich is rich. In any case, you all behave the same way. For a while, her face briefly displays what appears to be shock or even pain. However, it's gone so fast that I might have envisioned it. She says slowly, as if to see if the name has any meaning. My name is Vivian Sterling. To me, she goes on when I just look at her indifferently. Sterling Technologies, the facial recognition software utilized in airports across the globe, the social protocols for media privacy that safeguard millions of users. I give a shrug. Never heard of it. I'm not in Silicon Valley. I work in a hospital. Her expression is so unbelievable that I nearly burst out laughing. It is obvious that this woman is accustomed to being recognized everywhere she goes. And she appears to have short-circuited her brain by being completely unaware of her existence. It seems that a flight attendant tells us that our ride has come. Intense silence, we disembark, and I'm instantly struck by how different everything feels in this place. The architecture is stunning, the air has a distinct scent, and even the airport seems more refined than I'm accustomed to. A sleek black. The driver takes our bags silently while the car waits for us. The journey into the city is extremely uncomfortable. An explanation. Vivian talks in what appears to be fluent French while using her phone all day, looking at me every now and then as if I might try to steal something. Instead, I watch Paris awaken through the window. All around us, the buildings are lovely. They are all made of rotted, cream-colored stone, balconies, and in the distance, the Eiffel Tower appears to be straight out of a postcard. As we arrive at I actually let out a gasp when I hear Hotel Georges V. The structure appears to be a palace, with marble columns reaching to the ceiling and doormen wearing white gloves. This is most definitely not the chain of low-cost motels. My intention was to remain in Miami. Vivian claims that there has been an issue. After exchanging quick French with the concierge, she looks at me with a look that says it was my fault. There is just one suite available. Fashion Week has booked everything else. It's okay. I say it fast. I can find another place to stay. Paris must have other hotels. How much money? She queries. Directly. For a last-minute room during one of the most popular weeks of the year, do you have thousands of euros? The truth of my predicament hits me hard. I may have $300 in my checking account and a credit card that is nearly completely depleted from the cost of this trip. I certainly cannot afford to spend any time in Paris during Fashion Week. According to Vivian, the suite has 2 bedrooms, appearing as though she is being forced to say every word until the jet is fixed. I guess we'll have to make it work. The penthouse suite is larger than my whole Bronx apartment. Windows from floor to ceiling provide a broad perspective of Paris, and the furnishings appear as though they would be at home in a museum. There are flowers all over the place, and there is a bathtub big enough to accommodate 4 people. I'll choose the smaller one, I say. Bedroom. In an attempt to defuse the situation, Vivian claims that there is only 1 bedroom, which doesn't match my eyes. The couch in the other room doubles as a bed, but it's an office. Naturally, it does, since there is no way that this day could get any more awkward. I'm in the center of this palace of a hotel room, still sporting my rumpled sneakers and scrubs when the full weight of everything suddenly falls upon me. Paris is where I am. I should be in Miami. I missed my job, so I miss taking care of my patients. My boss is probably panicking and trying to figure out where I am. Quesa, my younger sister, is anticipating my call. I don't know how to explain any of this, and it's tonight. My breathing becomes labored and my chest begins to feel constricted, swift and shallow. Suddenly, even though the room is huge, it feels too small, and my heartbeat is thumping in my ears. I lean back on the white leather couch and try to concentrate on taking deep breaths. But the panic is rising like a wave that will soon overwhelm me. I mutter to myself more than to Vivian. I can't breathe. I'm having trouble breathing. I get a panic attack. Spots dance and my hands begin to shake. Throughout my field of vision, I've witnessed enough anxiety attacks in patients to understand what's going on with me. but understanding doesn't make controlling it any simpler. My only thought is that everything has gone horribly wrong. How I'm confined in a foreign nation with a woman who believes I'm a criminal. How I was absent when my patients needed me. I am dimly conscious of movement next to me. Then, surprisingly softly, Vivian's voice breaks through the panic. "Look at me," she says, and her expression completely changes when I look into her eyes. The mask of the Ice Queen has disappeared, replaced by an almost worried-looking thing. "You're experiencing a panic attack. You must breathe with me." "All right. Hold for 4, out for 4, in for 4 counts." She exhibits the breathing pattern, and I make an effort to keep up. In contrast to the icy tone, her voice is steady and calm. Since I woke up on her plane, she has been using authority. Very slowly, very slowly. My normal breathing begins to resume. "That's good," she murmurs. "Retain." Entering and exiting. "You're secure here?" As the anxiety eventually passes, I feel utterly exhausted, embarrassed that this stranger just witnessed my collapse. I recline against the couch cushions. Entirely. "I apologize," I say, my voice still trembling. Normally, I don't break down. Like that, I've had a long day, and I should be at work. My patients are probably wondering where I am. I am, and I'm not sure how I'm going to tell anyone about it. Vivian remains silent for a while, examining my face as if she were attempting to solve a puzzle. At last, she says, "You're actually a nurse." It's not a query. This time, I can attest to the pediatric intensive care unit at Mount Spent 6 years there. This was meant to be my first genuine vacation since I began working there. Her expression changes in some way, and Vivian Sterling appears nearly human for the first time since I've known her. "I must apologize to you," she says softly. "I've had some negative encounters with people who are attempting to approach me for the wrong reasons. I shouldn't have made that assumption. One of them was you." Accepting my apology, I'm shocked at how much relief I feel. What she says, "I apologize for referring to you as just another wealthy individual. Nor was it fair." We are seated in. There was a brief period of silence during which the tension between us began to finally subside. Paris gleams outside the windows, the sunlight in the afternoon, and I can't help but believe that this isn't the worst place for me to be stranded. If I have to be somewhere, might occur eventually, Vivian says, and her voice sounds almost hesitant. "Given that perhaps we should try to make the most of our situation since we are stuck here until Monday." Golden sunlight greets you on Saturday morning, streaming through our suite's floor-to-ceiling windows. I feel more rested when I wake up on the converted couch. Despite the strange surroundings, I feel more at ease than I have in months. Vivian is sitting by the window, already awake, with her laptop and a cup of coffee, but she shuts it off as soon as she notices me getting up. She says, "Good morning," and her tone is softer than it was the day before. "I decided to order breakfast. I got a little of everything because I wasn't sure what you liked." The dining table has an amazing spread. New croissants, fruit, 3-way cooked eggs, and divinely scented coffee. There's more food than I typically eat within 2 days, but I'm too hungry to be concerned about the excess. Vivian goes on. "I made some calls. As we consume food, I know someone who can set up a private tour, even though the Laura is closed to the public today for maintenance. If you're considering it." I almost choke on my croissant. "A Laura private tour? Are you serious?" "Entirely, very seriously. Unless you'd prefer to do something else." The notion that I could view the Venus and Mona Lisa demo without, it feels like something out of a fairy tale to fight through tourist crowds. That sounds fantastic, but it must. It was very expensive. Vivian dismissively waves her hand. "Don't stress over the price. Think of it as my apology for threatening to have you taken into custody." 2 hours later, we're strolling through the deserted corridors of the most renowned museum in the world with a personal guide who discusses the works of art all around us in quiet, respectful tones. When I gasp at the sight of famous paintings, Vivian smiles, and she observes me more than she does the artwork. "I've only ever seen it in textbooks." She remarks, "You've never been to Europe before." As we stand in front of the Mona Lisa, I confess that I have never been anywhere before. My furthest journey was to Philadelphia for a nursing program conference. All of this is quite overwhelming, both positively and negatively. I turn to face her. At her in the museum's dim lighting, away from the harsh lights of the airplane and the anxiety of our first meeting, I can see that she's even more gorgeous than I had imagined. But her eyes have a sad expression. It's definitely good, but I keep waiting for someone to help me deal with the loneliness that all of her money can't seem to fix. She says softly, "You belong wherever you want to be. Tell me I don't belong here." There's something in her tone that gives me the impression that she's discussing more than just the museum. Vivian is adamant about taking me after the Laura. I protest that I can't afford anything in these stores while shopping along the Zulus, but she dismisses my worries. "I can't allow you to buy me dresses and accessories that cost more than my monthly salary." As she displays a gorgeous blue dress that most likely costs more than my car. I say, clothes, for the 10th time. Not, you're stranded in Paris wearing nothing but scrubs, and I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Sneakers. Since I'm not sure what you're expecting in return, it's excessive. I instantly regret what I said, and Vivian's face drops a little. I don't expect anything in return. Zariah. Simply want to show kindness to someone who has shown me kindness. Her statement helps me to understand that. I let her buy me the blue, even though I knew that true kindness might be harder to find in her world. Dress and well-fitting shoes. I insist on street food for lunch. Food in spite of Vivian's clear reluctance. We locate a garbage stand close to the Seine, and I observe her with the same expression someone might have when she takes her first bite of food purchased from a vendor, dispersing a bomb. It's actually good, she says, astonished. Did you think it would poison you? Generally speaking, I avoid eating anything that hasn't been prepared by a 5-star chef. We eat our craps on a bench by the river and observe the passing boats. Now the conversation flows more easily. Additionally, I discovered that Vivian has degrees from Stanford and Harvard, speaks 4 languages, and took over her father's company at the age of 25. How about you? She queries. What inspired you to become a nurse? I say, the words coming easier than they typically do. Cancer. She and I spent a lot of time in hospitals, and I witnessed how the nurses had a significant impact, both emotionally and medically. Her hand was held by them during the frightening parts, who clarified things for her when the doctors used unfamiliar terms. Has she recovered? No. I tremble. My brain? I was 18 when she passed away. However, those nurses kept her alive for months. Manageable. Instead of treating her like another patient, they made her feel important. For other families, I wanted to be that. Vivian remained silent for a while. I apologize for your loss. It had been a while ago, but it's the reason I act in this way. When afternoon gives way to evening, Vivian surprises me once more by recommending a boat cruise on the Seine. The boat is small and exclusive, with only the 2 of us and a captain with limited English proficiency. As the sun sets, Paris comes to life all around us, and I have the impression that I'm living in someone else's life. I think this is amazing. As we cross another elaborate bridge, we lean against the railing. I'm happy you're having fun, Vivian says, stepping over to stand next to me. I can't recall the last time I took an impromptu action like this. What do you typically do for enjoyment? Mostly work, calls from investors, board meetings, and progress. Actually, I don't have any hobbies. It sounds lonely. Yes, she admits in a low voice. However, it's safer than allowing people to approach. Her voice has a vulnerable quality that makes me look directly at her. As the last of the sunlight bounces off the water, everything appears to be golden radiance, and in this light, Vivian appears almost ethereal. What makes it safer? I inquire, because you never know if people want you or what you can offer them when you have as much money as I do. The integrity. Something in my chest cracks open when she responds. I instinctively reach out and touch her hand where it's resting on the railing. Vivian, I don't want your money. What are you looking for? The query lingers between us, burdened with potentiality. I should take a step back and keep in mind that this is only a weekend. After that, we'll go back to our entirely distinct lives. However, as I stand beside her and watch the Parisian lights sparkle in her eyes, I consider myself to be pragmatic. To be honest, I want to know you, the authentic you, not the ice queen persona you adopt when you're afraid. Her expression changes, and then she's bending toward me. Her perfume is so subtle and pricey that it makes my head spin. When she gives a kiss, at first, it seems gentle and hesitant to me, as if she's requesting permission. However, she intensifies our kiss when I return the favor, and I feel as though I'm going to plummet off the edge of the world. We're both breathing heavily when we finally split up. The evening's enchantment is beginning to fade as they make their way back toward the dock. We ought to return to the hotel, but her voice is rough with emotion. Vivian says, from the moment I wake up on Sunday morning, something feels different. I'm back on the couch, and Vivian is still in bed, but there's a fundamental shift between us. When she eventually comes out of the bedroom, her hair disheveled from sleep, and only dressed in a silk robe, I can feel my heart skip a beat. She says, "Good morning," as she settles down with her coffee on the couch next to me. Good morning. Our day is spent speaking to someone in a manner I've never used before. She talks to me about having parents who were more interested in acquisitions and mergers than their daughter, about assuming control of the business and being dismissed by all of the men in the boardroom regarding the loneliness that results from owning everything that money can purchase, but no, someone with whom to share it. After our mother passed away, I told her about raising my younger siblings, about juggling 3 jobs to get through nursing school, about the burden of having to take care of everyone around me at such a young age. You've Have you never lived solely for yourself? As we lay on the couch with my head resting on her shoulder, she asks, I confess I wouldn't know how I could instruct you. I'm drawn to her because of something in her voice, and I'm in awe of the intensity in her eyes. This time, when she kisses me, her hunger is equal to mine. We take our time making love, as if we're both worried that the bubble we've created will burst if we go too quickly. After that, we are entangled on the large couch, gazing through the enormous windows as the sun sank over Paris. This is unlike anything I've ever experienced. This entire, desperate longing mixed with contentment. I want to commit every detail of this moment to memory. The play of the light across Vivian's skin, the sound of her breathing, the sensation of total safety and vitality simultaneously. I whisper against her collarbone. I don't want this to end. I don't either. We live in this fantasy where our disparate worlds are irrelevant for a few blissful hours, in which, a billionaire heiress and a Bronx nurse can truly work together, and perhaps love will be sufficient to heal their differences between our lives. But fantasies are transient. Vivian's phone turns on, ringing while we're deciding whether to go out to eat or order room service. She looks at the display and frowns. It's my helper. Unless it's an emergency. She never calls on the weekends. She picks up the phone, and I observe how her expression changed in a matter of seconds from one of satisfaction to horror. By photos, do you mean? Sharply, she says. You saw them where? What is the number of publications? As the pieces come together, my stomach sinks. The paparazzi, pictures of us. It just made our ideal weekend much more difficult. Vivian's, as she listens to her assistant, her face turns white, and I see our ideal bubble begin to burst. The sides. Now that she's pacing, her free hand is tearing through her hair, ruining the meticulous styling she maintains consistently. To what extent has it been adopted by outlets? Her voice is tight as she asks, with restrained panic, what do the pictures depict exactly? I am unable to hear the other side of the discussion, but I don't have to. I can tell everything I need to know from the expression on Vivian's face. Someone captured us together yesterday, most likely at the restaurant where we had dinner, or while we were taking a stroll along the Seine. We are about to experience the worst possible collision between the real world and the fantasy weekend we have been living. Give me, Vivienne says into the phone, everything, every image, every piece of writing, every post on social media. I have to know exactly what we're up against. After hanging up, she starts, her face darkening with each swipe as she browsed through her phone. Without saying anything, she flips my heart stops as the screen comes toward me. The image is strikingly clear for what it must have been a distant shot. It depicts us on the boat last night, kissing against each other while my hand touched her face. The illuminated Eiffel Tower in the background. We appear to be lovers, which I guess we are at this point. However, observing it, my stomach turns when I see the headline, Sterling Technologies, Heiress Secret Romance, posted on a gossip website. To date, it has been published in 12 different publications. Vivian's voice is entirely devoid of any warmth, held only a few minutes ago. TMZ, page 6. I've never read the Daily Mail or some French tabloids. Heard of. They're referring to you as my mystery woman and making assumptions about your past and the length of time we've been dating. Been in a relationship. I look through her phone's other pictures. Each one depicts a distinct moment from our weekend. Us, strolling through Paris's streets, hand in hand. She said something outside the Lura that made me laugh. Her gaze on. I have such a tender expression that it hurts my chest to see it photographed and presented to the world. Amusement. She talks more to herself than to me, which is bad. This is terrible. Why? I inquire, but I'm beginning to comprehend. You're allowed to date people, right? I know it's terrible and intrusive. Vivian looks at me as if I just proposed that we rob a bank. You're not understanding. My whole life and my entire business rely on upholding a particular image. I can't be viewed as impulsive or careless. Because I'm young and female. The board of directors is already searching for reasons to doubt my judgment. This provides ammunition. What are you saying? Then, you appear reckless when you date me. My voice must be hurting. Evident since she starts going back right away. However, the harm has already been done. I didn't mean that. It's simply that this relationship, whatever it is developing so quickly. People will assume I'm not thinking straight. This relationship, I reiterate, and it hurts to hear her say it in such a clinical manner. Is that the new name for it? Before she is able to, her phone rings again, and she answers. She answers even though it's a number she doesn't recognize this time. This, Miss Sterling, is Entertainment Tonight's Rebecca Chen. Regarding the images that surfaced today, we were hoping for feedback. Displaying you in Paris with an unnamed woman, Vivian immediately hangs up. However, the phone rings once more in a matter of seconds. Then again and again. She says, I need to call my publicist, adopting the icy, business-like tone I recall from our first meeting, as well as my attorney and most likely my security chief, to determine how these pictures were taken in the... First of all, she leaves me alone on the couch where we were wrapped and goes into the bedroom to make her calls. Just an hour ago, and I can hear her talking damage in a sharp, authoritative voice coming through the door. Control with what sounds like half of Manhattan. An hour later, she comes out completely clothed in one of her immaculate business suits. And the change is so total that it's as if the woman who made love to me now. There was never a morning. She says, "We need to talk." And I feel sad because nothing positive ever comes from those words. The physical distance between us feels like a chasm, and she sits across from me rather than next to me. My team believes that framing our weekend as a business meeting that evolved into a friendship is the best way to handle this. Perhaps we were a business meeting to discuss a possible partnership between Mount Sinai Hospital and Sterling Technologies. I work in technology, and you're a medical professional. So it's plausible. Are plausible explanations for why we may have been meeting. What about the pictures of us sharing a kiss? We claim the media mistook a friendly gesture, customs of greeting people in Europe, etc. The informality with which we just act like none of this was real because it makes me sick to dismantle everything that happened between us. I have shareholders to answer to, a board of directors who are in charge of... I can't afford to appear unstable because competitors are already doubting my leadership and would love to see me fail. And you appear unstable when you're with me right now. Being spotted hurrying into a relationship with someone I've only known for 3 days could make people doubt my judgment. The statement struck me like a slap. Someone I've known for 3 days. As though our intimacy and connection can be boiled down to I get up from the couch and say, simple timeline. Well, we wouldn't want anyone to doubt your valuable judgment. Isn't that unfair? You're actually saying that our relationship hurts your reputation. How am I supposed to feel about that? Vivian messes up her flawless hairstyle by running a hand through it. I'm attempting to keep us both safe here. Can you imagine what it's like to have your personal life scrutinized by the media? They will investigate every aspect of your life, including your dating history, job, family, and finances. In search of a story, they will completely upend your life. The idea of reporters phoning my younger sister or my stomach turns when I show up at the hospital where I work. But there's another tone in Vivian's voice that I'm bothered. My money. I inquire. What's that got to do with anything? Gold digger stories sell magazines, so people will think you're with me for the money. You're afraid they might be correct. She says it quickly, but there's just enough hesitancy for it to seem false. Of course not. You could always pay me off if that was a concern of yours. Right. Ensure that I receive fair compensation for my time. I know I've struck too close to home because Vivian's face flushes. Wasn't going to say that. But you were thinking that I could assist you in establishing a trust fund, perhaps, or settle your student loans. Make sure you're taken care of. The offer is uncertain, between us like a poisonous cloud. Take care of me as though I were a pet she has grown to love, but is unable to maintain. Silently. What? Leave this room immediately. Zaria, you're not understanding me. Am I? It seems like you're attempting to buy me off so you can return to your ideal, well-managed life without... This isn't about worrying about the mess you made with the poor girl from the Bronx. So what is it? Vivian, because it appears to me that you're anxious about what other people will think of you. She opens her mouth to say, you want to throw money at the problem until it goes away after being with someone like me. Argue. But I interrupted her. The most pitiful thing is that, for a brief moment, I genuinely believed you. We're different. You're just like everyone else. But I thought maybe you thought I was more than just another charity case. I've never met a rich person who reaches for their checkbook when things get complicated. You're being unjust. I'm being truthful. Something has changed. Vivian looks at me for a while, and I can see the precise moment she chooses to hide behind her Ice Queen mask. Her voice is professional and icy when she speaks again. All right, there's nothing more to talk about if that's how you want to see it. The jet will be ready in a few hours. I'll make arrangements for separate transportation to the airport. That would be ideal. If you have separate flights, can handle it. She turns to go. God forbid someone sees us together again, then stops at the bedroom door. In any case, this weekend also held significance for me. I'm alone in the most exquisite hotel room I've ever seen as the door softly clicks shut behind her. Seen, feeling worse than I have in years, and the return flight to New York is just as uncomfortable as I. Vivian made arrangements for me to travel in first class on a commercial flight while she takes... I stare at her private jet the whole time. We don't talk at the airport. And we don't even look at each other, out the window, reliving our entire weekend and attempting to determine what went wrong 3 days ago. I was a weary nurse who boarded the wrong plane. And now I'm going home with my face likely ruined and my heart broken. Displayed on half the internet. When I eventually return to my Bronx apartment, everything appears to be exactly the same, but I feel like a totally different person. Kesa, my younger sister, is waiting for me, asking me a million questions about why I didn't visit Miami, and I need to think of a tale of canceled connections and flight delays that seems plausible enough to pique her interest. The following 3 weeks fly by, filled with 12-hour shifts and restless nights. I bring a level of intensity to work that concerns my coworkers, staying late to arrange unnecessary supply closets. I don't pay attention to the rumors. I volunteer and organize every challenging case that comes through the unit. Websites. I most certainly don't read the articles about Vivian Sterling's enigmatic Paris weekend. I can't stop watching the entertainment news segments that my coworkers are constantly trying to show me on their phones. When I'm trying to sleep on my lumpy mattress, I think about her and recall how it felt. I imagine her during my lunch breaks, wondering if she's eating street food or if she's waking up in her arms. Return to her 5-star restaurants. When I see couples on the subway holding hands, I wonder about her, if she ever gives me any thought. In those 3 weeks, my phone rings exactly once, and it's not her. Miss, I'm Jonathan Walsh from Sterling Technologies, Monroe, and Miss Sterling asked me to inquire further about the offer we talked about your student loan debt. I silently end the call, and the offer to settle my debts is presented. The mail, 2 days later, accompanied by a formal letter that appears to have been drafted by a group of attorneys. Clinical, aloof, and professional. I toss it in the garbage without even opening, but as I lay awake in the middle of the night, gazing at the ceiling, I wonder if she was correct. Perhaps 3 days isn't long enough to construct something tangible. Perhaps I was simply engrossed in the romanticism of Paris and opulent hotels, and a life never intended for me. Perhaps it's better this way. The idea doesn't make my heart hurt, chest any less hurting, but it's simpler than acknowledging that I fell in love with someone who was prepared to sacrifice everything for me. Away as soon as it became inconvenient. 3 weeks after Paris, I'm working a late shift when one of the other nurses displays a picture of Vivian Sterling at a charity on her phone. Gayla is smiling, gorgeous, and looking. You know how some people assumed she was dating someone? It's as if she doesn't give a damn, as if she would ever date a normal person, the nurse says. I excuse myself to leave, sob in the supply closet amid medical gauze boxes and the increasingly overpowering antiseptic odor. As I can't believe it myself, it's more reassuring than any perfume. I'm not counting, but it's been 3 weeks and 2 days since Paris. When Dr. Martinez discovers me replenishing during what should have been my lunch break, she says, Zaria, someone is here to see you. She also mentions something. I look up from the stack of IV bags I'm organizing because of the tone she uses. If it's another reporter, I've already told. She claims to be here regarding a possible hospital, but I'm not speaking to anyone. It's not a reporter. Partnership. My hands freeze on the idea of financing a new pediatric wing. The medical supplies. The only person who would come here to discuss hospital partnerships is... She's waiting in the conference room, and the thought of seeing her again makes my chest tight with a mix of fear and hope. Dr. Martinez goes on, and Zaria, she appears just as anxious as you do. Vivian is currently standing by the window in the tiny conference room. She's wearing another one of her flawless outfits and is gazing out at the parking lot as if it were the universe's secrets. Business suits, but her hair is a little untidy, and even pricey concealer can't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Cannot fully conceal. Hi, Zaria. Vivian. I shut the door after me and, suddenly thankful for the barrier, she leans against it. Dr. Martinez mentions a pediatric wing. She turns from the window, and I notice how different she looks. Something has taken the place of the Ice Queen mask. Sterling Technologies wishes to finance a new, cutting-edge pediatric intensive care unit that is both vulnerable and uncertain. $20 million, no conditions attached. Care unit, we would like you to advise on $20 million for the design and equipment specifications. I say that again because, just like that, it's so ridiculous, I can't even comprehend it. Vivian steps closer, and I can see that her hands are shaking. What exactly do you get out of this deal? A little, an opportunity to make a difference, an opportunity to assist the kind of children you look after every day, and perhaps, if I'm extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to speak with you without you ending the call. The allusion to her assistant's call makes my cheeks burn. I have nothing to say to you, I understand. But I do have things to say, and I'm hoping you'll pay attention. My pager goes off before I can reply. Emergency in room 314. I look at Vivian, caught between this and my work obligations. Dialogue I've been hoping for and dreading. Go, she says quietly. I'll wait. It takes 4 hours to fix the emergency. A 7-year-old girl with, by the time I get her stabilized, the complications from a routine surgery have escalated into a battle for her life. It's almost midnight. The hospital has gotten into its peaceful nighttime routine. and I find Vivian cozy. She was sitting in the conference room, exactly where I left her, but now there was a pile of papers on the table. When I walk in, she looks up, and something about her face reminds me of that first night in Paris. "How is she?" Vivienne asks. "She'll be all right?" It was touch and go for her when she helped me get through my panic attack. A while, but children are tough. I collapse into the chair across from her. Suddenly worn out. "You didn't have to wait." I did. After a brief period of silence, I discovered that the papers strewn all over the table are architectural, specifications for medical equipment, and drawings. She wasn't lying about the pediatric wing. "Why are you really here?" "Vivienne." She inhales deeply, and her voice is softer than I've ever heard it when she talks. 3 weeks ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life, and I need to try to make amends by spending money on it. Since we returned from Paris, I haven't slept for more than 2 hours every night. So I'm being honest with you. I'm surprised by how sincere she is when she says that I've been utterly miserable without you. But I'm not yet ready to let my defenses down. You made your decision. You selected your board of directors and your image, your priceless reputation over everything we owned. You're correct. I did, and it was the worst choice I've ever made. What's changed? Then Vivienne reaches into, she takes out a folder from her briefcase and slides it across the table to me, containing printed copies of news articles, all from the past week. Following a diversity initiative, Sterling Technologies' stock reaches an all-time high. Announcement: Fortune's list of the most creative leaders under 40 includes tech heiress Vivian Sterling of Sterling Technologies. Wins a significant government contract for privacy software. I'm perplexed as I stare up at her, not understanding the pictures. From Paris, the rumors that we were dating didn't damage my reputation at all. On the contrary, it made me more relatable. Approval ratings among employees and investors actually increased, and the board of directors said that witnessing I seemed more relatable because I had a personal life. The irony is so strong that I could cut it with a scalpel, destroying our relationship for no reason at all, but rather out of fear that I wasn't good enough for you, that you'd understand what other people already know about me. What? That underneath, I'm just a lonely person who doesn't know how to let people get close without trying. Despite all the wealth and success, control everything, the honest and unvarnished admission lingers between us in a way that brings back memories of our talks in Paris before everything fell apart. If you'd like a more private setting, the chapel is open. I go there when I need to think, and I say quietly, private to talk. Simple wooden pews and dim lighting characterize the tiny, non-denominational hospital chapel, designed to be consoling for people of all faiths. It is utterly deserted and serene at 3 in the morning. That's never the case in the rest of the hospital. We sit in the back pew, close enough that I can smell her perfume, the same one she wore in Paris, and it reminds me of a lot of things I've been trying to suppress. Vivienne says abruptly, "I've never been in love before. I believed I had been, but my feelings for you in Paris were entirely distinct from anything I had ever felt before. I was scared, so you fled. I became anxious, and I told myself that what we had, it seemed easier to end it on my own terms, that you would eventually see how damaged I am and leave anyhow. I turned to face her in the dark chapel, rather than wait for you to decide that I'm not worth the trouble." Lighting, and her eyes are wet. "Do you realize how much you've hurt me?" "I know, and I'm more sorry than I can possibly convey. I understand that an apology is insufficient, but I must let you know that losing you has been the worst thing I have ever experienced." I ask, recalling what she told me about her, "Is that worse than when your parents died?" "Childhood. Yes, because I made the decision to let you go. I had something wonderful, but I threw it away because I was too afraid to think I deserved it." Her candor dismantles the last of my barriers. I whisper, "I love you too." She says, "I love you." And this time when she reaches for my hand, I don't yank away. "I've been miserable without you. You inspire me to be a better person, and I appreciate your compassion and strength. I love that you see. Where does that leave us?" "That depends. Are you willing to go through all of my walls and see what's underneath? To give us another opportunity so I can show you that I'm the kind of partner you deserve?" I look at her face in the gentle chapel lighting, searching for any indication of the calculating coldness that caused her to leave me 3 weeks ago. But all I see is, it's breathtaking how evident the love, hope, and vulnerability are. "Chance," I say, but this time, there must be no more concealment, more acting. This is merely informal. If we act in this way, we act seriously. She accepts, and it feels like home when she kisses me. 6 months later, we found a rhythm in our lives that works better than either of us anticipated. Vivian divides her time between, she purchased a brownstone and a Manhattan penthouse 3 blocks from my apartment, close enough that she has fulfilled her promise to walk to my place, but not so far that I feel like I'm being engulfed by her world. Not concealing our relationship, we've been pictured together at baseball games, charity galas, upscale, restaurants, and the bodega on the corner where I get my coffee in the morning. At first, the media attention was intense, but it's died down to a manageable level as Chase has been exposed to newer scandals from other celebrities. The pediatric wing at Mountain Sinai is almost complete, and it will be amazing, Vivian demanded, visiting all of the East Coast children's hospitals to ensure that we incorporated the best aspects of each one. She's also began reading to children in long-term care one afternoon a week as a volunteer at the hospital, observing. She never stops being funny when she's wearing scrubs instead of fancy suits. I've discovered to give in to some of the luxuries that come with dating a billionaire, but I still insist on covering my own rent and purchasing my own food. We make concessions on things like dining out and trips, and I've grown accustomed to traveling in first class, despite the fact that it still seems absurdly lavish. Most importantly, Vivian tells me when she's afraid I'll get tired, because we've both learned to be vulnerable with one another. When I feel overwhelmed by the disparities between our backgrounds, I tell her, I'm tired of the media attention and I'm leaving. We talk through our anxieties rather than allowing them to create barriers between us. On the morning of our 1-year anniversary, Vivian awakens. I have a surprise for you, she said, setting me up with coffee and croissants from the French bakery that has become a weekend ritual. She says, and her apprehensive tone draws my attention to her. What kind of surprise? The type where you have to have faith in me and refrain from asking questions until we arrive. An hour later, we're pulling up. My heart begins to race as I head to the same private airfield where I made my fatal error precisely 1 year ago. Recognize what she's planning. Why are we here? We're going on a trip. Don't. I'm worried, so I check the flight plan again. The gate where I got on the wrong plane has white decorations. I'm shocked to see flowers and fairy lights, and a photographer is subtly set up to take pictures. Vivian is getting down on one knee on the tarmac, so I hardly notice what's going on. She takes out a ring box that has been stashed in her coat pocket and says, Zariah Monroe, you were on the wrong plane and permanently altered my life. You inspired me to have courage and showed me what true love feels like, enough to merit it. Are you going to wed me? The ring is flawless and sophisticated, but not conspicuous. Obviously picked by someone who knows me well enough to realize that I don't require a rock the size of a to feel loved. Play golf. Yes, I admit that I was crying without realizing it. Indeed, without a doubt. Indeed. She, with trembling hands, he slides the ring onto my finger. Additionally, I can hear the photographer's voices as she gets up to kiss me. The camera is clicking away. However, I don't give a damn about the photos or the inevitable press attention. My only concern is the amazing life we're creating together. And the woman in my arms, our 6th wedding. That's exactly what we both wanted months later. A festival that respects both of our worlds without pressuring either of us to compromise our identity. The small, private ceremony took place in the chapel at Mount Sinai, where we had our first meaningful discussion following Paris. The chapel's left side is occupied by my family. Vivian's side, however, is smaller, but also her closest pals and the board members, who have grown to be like family to her. I don my grandmother's. Wearing a vintage brooch that belonged to her mother, Vivian accessorizes her engagement ring with a simple gold band. Our vows are personal commitments that we wrote ourselves, filled with inside jokes about improper planes and food from the street. Discovering how to love fearlessly. Vivian's Hamptons estate is the venue for the reception, but she has prepared a ton of food, trucks as well as a DJ who plays music, my younger cousin's request. We dance to everything from hip-hop to classical music. Hop and I see the most exquisite collision between my worlds. While we were, no regrets about the wrong plane. Vivian whispers in my ear during the first dance. None, I reply. The best error I ever created, as we swing together beneath the stars with everyone we care about by our sides. I consider how different a year ago, life looked like this. I was a weary nurse taking a plane to Miami for a much-needed vacation. I'm now spouse, a partner, or someone who has come to terms with the fact that love isn't always rational. But that doesn't lessen its reality. Sometimes you can get to your destination even if you're on the wrong plane.